Thank you for tuning in to Exeter TV. The meeting will be starting shortly. While we wait, let's learn more about Exeter TV. Exeter TV is the town's public and government access channels, available on Comcast channels 98 and 22. Channel 98 is your channel. If you have an idea for a program, want to host your own talk show, or submit a film, we're here to get your content on television. On Channel 22, we bring you live and replay coverage of government meetings and other town updates. A third channel, Blue Hawk Media, is operated by SAU 16 and can be found on Channel 13, with all your school sports, events, and meetings. You can watch Exeter TV online at exeternh.tv, Apple TV, and on Roku. Find us on social media for extra content. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the bell to get notified about live streams and new content. Tune in to our platforms every other Friday to watch the Exeter Biweekly Report with recaps of recent events, updates from town departments, and messages from nonprofits in your area. If you head to our website, exeternh.tv, we invite you to sign up to our newsletter to receive monthly updates about new content, upcoming meetings, and more. We'd like to thank you for taking the time to watch Exeter TV and hope that you tune in to our other content as well.
Maybe we should just introduce ourselves to you. So I'm Chetna Palmer, currently the chair, might not be anymore.
Christopher Zigmont, presently vice chair for another couple minutes.
What? Go on.
Or as long as they'll have me, I don't care.
Nina Braun, just a member, no chairs.
Jeb D'Angela, also no chairs.
I'm Kristen Murphy. I'm the Conservation and Sustainability Planner and provide staff support to this group.
I'm Adam Dunville, and I'm was the newest member until today.
Oh, nice. And we've got Kristen, who normally does take the minutes, so she's not here. So, but she does. She's got little kids and whatever, so she's normally busy, and she joins when she can. So, but she's the other member.
Stacey
Rogers. Stacey Rogers.
So is there shifting in
a minute?
Okay.
And would you just like to just introduce yourselves, just so that we be great?
Yeah. Just a little bit about.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. I'm Stacey Rogers. We moved here about a year ago. We had 2 little kids, 4-year-old and an 18-month-old, and I'm very, very excited to get involved. This is my biggest passion. Cool. So, very thankful to just be doing something more than our own household with just getting involved.
Great.
Where did you move from?
We moved from Oregon, but we've been very nomadic for the last few years. But we are settling in, and we do not want to move again.
Very nice.
But my husband and I both grew up outside of Philadelphia.
Okay.
So,
We're about
yeah.
outside.
Westchester.
Oh wow! I worked in Westchester for a while. Yeah.
You did?
Yeah.
My mom lives there.
No
I grew up
way.
in Bucks County.
Oh wow! Yeah.
Lovely place to ride bikes. Yeah.
Well, as long as you guys aren't Eagles fans, we'll get along fine.
I'm not. Yeah, my husband is. I'm not. So
That's okay. I'm a Giants fan, which is why I said it.
Oh, okay.
That's not helping either. But anyway.
I know, it doesn't help the rest of the group, but.
I don't support anyone. I support whoever is the best, the favorite, or the underdog? I don't know. Doesn't matter.
I was the underdog.
Right.
My name is Ryan Jean. I work at Revision Energy. I'm the technical operations specialist over there for the photovoltaics division for all of New Hampshire. Essentially the technical project manager for every job, residential project that goes out of that branch. And our Upper Valley branch, I have a sustainability degree. I minored in physics. I love getting my hands on the problem, which is why I love working at Revision. And I lived in Exeter for pretty much my whole life, other than school. Just looking for something that I can continue my passion outside of work in sustainability, and taking a look at different committees that I might be interested in partaking in, and seeing how that goes. So that's kind of that first step.
Welcome. We have to be on our best behaviour and impress Ryan so that he joins us. We still need more members.
We're off to a bad start.
All right. So before we move on, we need election of officers. So
Oh boy.
yeah.
Is there?
Do you know how that works, Kristen?
So generally, someone can nominate, like the motion would be I nominate so-and-so for whatever position, and there's a second, and
Okay.
you get voted in just like any other vote. I mean, generally there is a little backroom chatter just to make sure that people might be interested in the positions that they might be nominated for, but
I like
My-
secret
my-
ballots and crayons sound better to me, but anyway.
I mean, my thought just as staff support is it really makes a stronger committee when you do shake it up, even if you're not like ready to jump into the role. But if you're happy in your position and you really want to hold on to it and you agree with current positions, you can do that too. It's really up to the committee. No pressure.
Well, I guess, heck, I mean, we probably just should have the conversation too. I mean, if I agree, I think, mixing it up is great. And also, if there's, I think also interest among members too, to take a role, I think that's great. I mean, would totally want to support people that want to be doing something too, right? So that's all I have to say about that.
Do we have to vote tonight, or can we wait till?
I mean,
we have
generally
some
this
members,
happens, this happens at the April meeting, so.
And it didn't happen in
And it
April.
didn't happen,
Right.
So that's where we
there's
are.
no like committee police that's gonna.
I will say that I really don't like taking notes, so I do not want to be the secretary. but
But Kristen normally does that.
Kristen normally does that.
If
but
she's around.
If she's around. But that said, if people can tolerate this, we can't not have minutes. So, but it's low on my list of things that I like to do, for what it's worth.
And thoughts on?
I've got no. I mean,
Yeah.
I think it's up to you guys to decide on.
But,
isn't it?
I mean, if somebody is no longer interested in being an officer.
As in as a
Like,
chair or
Yeah,
the VP
chair,
or whatever.
yeah. Because,
Are you carefully dancing around the question of whether or not
yes.
you would like to step
Yes.
down? Is that what you're
Yes,
asking?
that's what I'm asking. Are you?
You don't want to step on any toes.
No, I personally have no interest in being a chair. I have tried.
Yeah, I'll go on the record and say I don't have any interest in being a chair or the vice chair,
Right.
Okay.
just for the record.
And I will on the record say, I'm very happy with you doing.
Me too.
But if you want to switch it up or move on, or somebody else has some ideas.
Who likes to take minutes? No, I'm kidding.
I'm happy to
I
be the
can take
undersecretary.
The undersecretary.
I could take notes. I could be
Okay, we can
No, I'm honored that you asked me to take them.
I'm sorry.
No, it's fine.
Maybe it's fine. I should really. So.
No, it's fine. I'm always just very self-conscious of my,
Okay.
my right.
Well, maybe we can. If Jackie wants to be the note taker, then we can step Kristen away from that role, since her time in attending meetings aren't always regular.
Yeah, I saw it in the summer, swimming.
Yeah.
Time.
She's wonderful. She's normally here. She has a wild house of,
Yeah.
I don't know.
Four kids.
But they run around like 6
Yeah.
kids. And she works at Unitil. She's got a lot to offer, but she's just got a busy house.
Yes.
So,
So there's a secretary. There's 2 chairs in the secretary.
yeah.
Okay.
There's a chair,
Chair,
there'll
vice
be
chair.
vice chair.
Oh.
I think it's really up for the 2 of you to decide what you prefer.
No, I don't think
To
anybody
make it
wants to.
interesting.
We can do some like rock, paper, scissors. I think is that recognized in government? Rock, paper, scissors?
No.
All right.
We just change it from rock to.
I've got no problem. I mean, I'm just happy, whatever.
Same here.
So,
Talk about a rudderless ship, huh?
Well,
No.
I would
Say-
nominate.
Well, I was going to say, somebody over there should make a motion or nominate something, because it's really inappropriate for us to like,
say, yeah.
Nominate will take.
Yeah, it's like, oh my God, get rid of them in the role. So,
and we won't be offended if you nominate somebody else, like new
Yeah.
people. So that'd be fantastic also.
And we have to be democratic in this.
Exactly.
Well, I would nominate to keep things as a status quo except for Jackie to be the secretary at this juncture. That's,
I would second that.
Can I vote?
Sure,
I agree.
So then you should vote on the slate of officers as presented. It was motioned and seconded.
Okay.
And you can do that as chair, like continuing chair, in your role of chair until,
Okay, so in my continuing role as chair, Adam has asked for everyone to be as is, except for Jackie's role to be the note taker and the secretary, the clerk, whatever the official role is, and Nina has seconded it. And just do the others vote? Do we-
yeah, so then a full vote, just like you would on any other motion. So were you appointed or
It was pretty
interviewed?
verbal.
They were, yeah.
Okay,
Nico was just doing
so
it.
they'll
They're-
appoint tonight, so you'll vote at the next meeting.
Okay.
But we still have
That's good.
quorum. so
Dodged a
you're
bullet,
good.
didn't you?
2 minutes ago.
All right.
So I agree. I don't know what I'm supposed to say. I can't be the chair because I don't know any rules.
Nay, I want to, no, on this slate, no.
What does that mean?
It was put out that you put forward a motion that you wanted the chair, vice chair to stay the same and change secretary, and that's the vote on the table, and I vote nay.
No.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're stuck.
No, we're not stuck. I'll put forward, well, have we all gone around the table? I might lose. You never know. Have you, you seconded,
I second it, so I said
and you
yay.
voted yay, and you put it forward, so that's your yes vote, so I miss out.
I'm interested now
You're interested now in what?
on why you said no.
I was gonna put forward that Adam take the vice chair.
All right.
Okay,
People are
so
intrigued over here.
motion carries.
Yeah, motion carries.
Not to
Yeah.
chair.
No, we need you to keep steering us, that's great.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
it
I'm
was,
happy to assist in the shadows.
Great, perfect.
so it was a 3-1 vote with, did you abstain? I didn't catch your vote.
Yeah, I abstained.
And 1 abstention.
So are you already taking notes? Because I can share what I've already written.
I'm typing stuff.
Great, okay, perfect, great. We'll compare notes after, see what I missed.
I'm gonna have to rewrite these,
Okay, yeah.
but I can do that.
Okay, so, is it okay?
Carry on.
So Chris remains as VP, Vice Chair?
Vice Chair, yeah, I guess so, yeah. It's fine,
okay?
happy to be here, yeah.
Okay. And I will remain as Chair. And Jackie will
Welcome
be-
Jackie on as
will-
Secretary.
As a Secretary. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. That was flawless.
Maybe start thinking about the next one.
Right into it, we'll run into it more prepared.
More members by then.
Yeah.
so-
We'll have more members by the name
More
of it.
prepared.
Okay, so, my gosh, I don't think we never approved the minutes from May, and it was included in your pack.
Oh, because we couldn't,
Yeah,
right.
because we hadn't had,
That's
we
right.
didn't have a quorum.
I was wondering why they were in there, okay, yeah, okay.
And June, I think, again, it wasn't a quorum, so I don't think we did
We
much. We didn't take minutes,
Yeah.
I don't think. I think that was a, so if you've got your main minutes, you should have had them in
Yep.
your agenda. Were there any comments or anything to go, any changes? And if everything was okay, can someone,
I moved to approve the
Accept,
minutes,
yeah.
yep.
you approve?
Yeah, I moved to approve the minutes, yes.
Second. Thank you, Jackie. Thank you, Chris. All right. Okay. And our main subject for this evening is obviously with the single-use plastic document that was prepared. And Kristen will go through the survey that was sent out to the departments and the staff.
I was trying to bring it up so that you guys could see it as well, but I might have extras that I can have. So should I just carry on from where we left off?
Yeah, so I think what we want to do, hopefully, is if we can agree on the ordinance layout and what it's saying at this meeting, it would be really, really good. Because once we approve with it, we then have to present to the select board 3 times. And it was suggested that we present at the 2 select board meetings in October and then 1 in November. So it's a public meeting, obviously public are invited, and it's for us to present our findings and also the reasons behind trying to ban single-use plastic on municipal property. So it's not town-wide as yet. So that will be something else that hopefully we can discuss soon, once this is passed, maybe. But yeah, so we if we approve the document today, we will then have to obviously put our for a better word, argument and discussion forward as to why we see it as being important for the town to adopt on municipal property only. So that has to be clear. Make sure that's clear on that. So, Kristen.
Sure. So just for your benefit, and if there are folks watching, there was a desire by this committee to put forward a ban on single-use plastics. In New Hampshire, municipalities only have authority to manage their own property. There were several iterations of legislation that went before the state. In New Hampshire, the state has to give towns the authority to create their own rules, basically. Several iterations went before the state and they didn't pass. So this committee collectively felt that let's focus on what we can achieve now and let's at least try to move something forward. And so we looked at another nearby community, Portsmouth, which actually adopted a ban on both, more for the, I would say more for the public, I don't know what the right display or whatever, that in unity the City Council of Portsmouth was against the use of single-use plastics, even though it was unenforceable on non-city-owned property. So we took their version, kind of edited it to fit Exeter's desires, our community, and we've gone through, I want to say three revisions. At the last full meeting, which would have been May, this board did take a vote on the language, but I really wanted to take some time. I was worried that the select board, I didn't want the public to storm the select board and have them blindsided, not understand, what the policy was about. And so I thought it would be best to pull those who might be most effective. So after the May meeting, I developed and I presented, it must have been at the June.
Right.
Yeah,
I presented 2 surveys at the June meeting. One directed to town staff, because if it's on town property, obviously it would apply to staff. And then the other to those who receive special use permits from the town. So that would be people who are on Swayze Parkway for special events. If there are members in the town hall for an activity, there are food trucks that park on town property, and so the select board does authorize those through special permit. So I took all of the permits that were issued from 2019 until, I want to say it may have been April 2022, and I tallied them up, and then I reached out to all of those that had 4 or more permits issued. And the reason I did that was, the reason I did 2019 through 2022, we know COVID was there and that kind of was a different animal. And so I felt like it's best to just kind of let's get everyone in the room together and let's talk about it. So I sent the surveys out, and I did send around a copy of the survey results. I don't have a bunch of copies, but you guys can look at these, and you all have it in your packet. So let's start with the staff survey. So you'll see that's kind of a summary of both of the surveys. So the staff survey, there were 8 total responses. I sent them to department heads and hoped that, we would, I assumed that we would hear back 1 response from each department head. So that was a pretty big response. And you can see what departments did reply: Public Works, Town Manager, Welfare and Human Services, Parks and Rec, Highway, Fire and Safety, Exeter TV, and Economic Development. Part of the survey I asked what single-use plastics, the department typically distributes. And I won't go through all of the details. I assume that you would have read this since it was in the packet, but I will say in general, there were a couple things that were evident to me as I kind of tried to summarize what the responses were. Overall, 57% did feel that the policy would adversely affect their department. 43 said no. And then
I'm sorry, what percentage said it would?
57% said they felt that it would affect their department, but I can go through some of the reasons why that is. So I think that there was a misunderstanding on what this policy would trigger in terms of reaction. So it was like, if someone brings in a Ziploc baggie with their snack in it, are they going to get in trouble? Or if they go shopping downtown and come back with something, do we have to fine our own town, and that sort of thing? And so from my perspective, to me, it felt as though, or another one was bags of salt, for the sidewalk, they come in a plastic bag. And so that really wasn't the intention of the policy. It was to limit what we're distributing.
Right.
There is a clarification that I'll make in a minute about trash bags, because that was another one. You can't really not do trash bags. We're a pay-as-you-throw community, etc. And so I do believe that most of those concerns really stem from the fact that it was sort of a misunderstanding about how this would be applied. And I think that we can address that fairly easily with some edits that I'll recommend in a minute. There was also, so our authority to ban this lies in our health codes, and that's how Portsmouth did it. That's how that's the method that we're following. And there was a question from the health officer, like, what kind of burden is this going to put on me? I need to understand this more. So James Murray did express interest in talking further about this policy and how to implement that. The other largest department is Parks and Rec, and that stems predominantly from the concession stand. If you go to the swimming pool, the funds generated at concession fund their staff through the season, and they rely pretty heavily on that income in order to, fund the staff. And what Greg and I have had several conversations about this. He was so amenable to some changes and has implemented some of them. So he's recently installed water bottle refill stations there. I think they might not yet be functional because there were some back-ordered parts. I don't know if that's been resolved or not. And making some changes in some of the products that they carry. Like he talked about compostable plasticware, utensils and things like that. But water bottles was a really big challenge for him.
Sure.
And so I can get into my recommendation on that in a minute. I do think that those changes that Parks and Rec is doing is going to make a huge difference anyway. But we do want to kind of march this forward, is my understanding of the committee. And so I suggest that we kind of leave that door open for conversation and working through that separately. We'll identify it in the policy, but work through a process outside of the policy. And then the other concern was expressed by emergency services. They, show up on scene for an incident, and that's part of their incident response is being sure people are hydrated and all of that. So I totally get that. That's how things have operated.
Yeah, and unfortunately, in their line of work as well, I mean, it is just a trash generation machine for all the right reasons to keep people alive or solve problems and stuff like that. And it's really a difficult space to, renewables and compostables are just not, they just can't happen there. So, boy, it's a good long-term sort of, but I think the gains you'd make would be so small. But yeah, so they keep an eye on it. I see where they're coming from for sure. Yeah.
So that was generally the staff response, and then I can step through. So the other survey that you have out is the town permittees. I might need to look. Oh, no, I do have another copy. So the front page of the survey response identifies who the most permits are issued to. The highest number of permittees goes to Exeter TV. Bob Glacki, I talked to him, that was mostly when they were reserving the rooms, because that's how they would book the rooms for meetings and whatnot. The Exeter Farmers Market, which is now Seacoast, run by Seacoast Local, they did specifically say that they follow this policy in Portsmouth, so it'll be a shift for them, but not a shift they can't overcome. Parks and Rec, which we already talked about, and then I did hear from Scott Ruffner of Team, and I can step through some of those responses in a minute. You can see who it was sent to, or who the permittees were, and then on the second page, it identifies who the organizations were that responded. The number of responses don't necessarily match to the number of organizations, because some people identify multiple organizations. Okay. So it was a little hard to decipher, but I did ask them where these events were, thinking maybe there could be a solution identified through that process. The majority are at Swayze Parkway, but most of them use multiple, many of them use multiple facilities. And again, just like we saw with town staff, the biggest hurdle for them is single-use plastics. For, water bottles, they talked about water bottles, well, we'll go into it. Overall, the town permittees, it was like 44% felt like Yes, the policy would have adverse effects, so it was a smaller number than town staff. 56 said no, they did not believe the policy would have adverse effects on their business. I did think that some of the responses were pretty insightful, and I thought there was some creative thinking happening, which was really interesting during the survey. So just in summary, all of the responses we got a lot of let's move this forward, about time, rest in peace, plastic bottles. There were some fun ones in there, but there were also some strong concerns. So some of the highlights were, again, the limit of single-use plastic water bottles, not just single-use plastics in general, but really targeted on water bottles. And safety came up again, keeping, the band members hydrated while they're performing and things of that nature. There was, from multiple places, people requested that if the town is limiting how this can be provided, that the town also consider providing safe drinking water sources. And so, yeah, I think that was a reasonable ask. There was definitely this kind of multiple comments surrounding trash and recycling at events. And so I did talk to Jay Perkins, because typically the way it works right now, the town will provide trash receptacles and they'll take that away, but we don't provide composting and we don't provide recycling. And most of that is because there's no one there to police what actually gets thrown away. And so there's a desire to, obviously, there's a fear of contamination in the bins, and not wanting to put that burden on the town staff who's there, cleaning up after the event. And then, let's see. Oh, there were questions about, could you have a limit? Can we just have one case of water per event and then prohibit anything greater than that? A recommendation, this was Seacoast Eat Local. They said that there should be some sort of exemption built in for food safety. Like when meat comes prepackaged from the facility, it has plastic on it, so that's how it's served. And then Meals on Wheels was another organization. They expressed strong concern about the impact on their ability to deliver a service. So I developed. Well, anyway. Let's talk about that. Let's take a breath and talk about that stuff.
Yeah, there's a lot of really good stuff in there, right? And it's nice to hear that people are thinking about it. And I think one of the challenges is, just listening to the half and half split at the high level in the survey results. Again, coming out of private industry, anything's possible, right? You just have to want to do it. And so it's difficult to hear half of the population can't imagine a vision, can't imagine a future, can't imagine a day without disposable plastics as part of it, and that's okay. It's a place to start. We have to start somewhere, this is an advisory committee, right? But I think maybe this is the beginning of an opportunity to we've had a couple of years to kind of find our legs. No one in this committee came from government that I know of, and we've been sort of kind of wide-eyed and seeing how to interact with the different committees, select board, and all that kind of stuff. But I think we still have a lot to learn, but we're getting our legs. And I think this topic's a great topic for us, a great opportunity to lead here, and without getting too in the weeds on each individual item, to pick the top three obstacles, barriers here to move things forward, and reach out to the people that are, it's easy to not do anything. That, and it's also easy to find people to agree with you. One of the little tiny lessons I learned a few years ago going to lobby our Congress, U.S. Congress, on behalf of cycling and pedestrian stuff, was everybody wanted to go visit the left because they were all for all the things we wanted to do, but the work to be done was on the other side, right? And to find those paths to get the other side to make pedestrian access and bike access. Well, I feel sort of the same thing here. The opportunity, I don't know which color represents which on the pie chart, but the opportunities in the people who don't have the vision yet. And I think while we don't have, as a committee, any power other than to recommend things, I think there's a great opportunity here to step in and have those one-on-one conversations and start. It's going to take 100 one-on-one conversations, but I think that's the opportunity for us right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think those. I mean, you mentioned Scott's reservations on this for his festivals that he runs on Swayze Park. I feel that as somebody who's totally passionate about sustainability and plastic being single-use plastic being such an eyesore and an issue, that there's so many examples out there of alternatives that people can use, and also everyone that I know of, maybe because it's probably the people I hang out with, we have our own reusable water bottles that we go and refill, right? And I think we've had this conversation before as a committee on, it'd be great to have water fountains, in town so that people can refill when they're out and about. And like when you're holding events, again, so many events are becoming plastic free and they are doable. And it's
at all scales.
At all scales. Yeah. And it is, it's sort of speaking to those who are hesitant and worried about, well, how am I going to, musicians going to, have water. It's like, well, there's ways around it, and there's ways that can happen. So I think, that those conversations need to happen, basically, to say that it is doable, because, it's out there, people are doing it, and you can definitely make it plastic free.
And I also think too, it's one of those things where we have to be willing to accept incremental progress as well, but we have to strive for every single opportunity we can get, and there's some reasonable bits of pushback on there that the fire and rescue guys, I get it, that's a difficult one, so that's obviously not a place we're going to focus our efforts on straight away. I think that you look at how many permits are pulled by, team alone, it was at 70 or something like that. I can't remember, it was a lot, and let's lay over the people that have found challenge with this idea against the people. I think you said you did that already, like how many people pulled how many permits, and dig in, and let's make a hit list of people to convince and things to propose and things like that, because I think we have to advise, right? We have to make some recommendations, and but we can't change everything, so we have to, let's go for the fat middle,
I think one of the ones regarding the feedback that was given that will be, some of them are obvious, like the emergency services and so forth, to make a clause for those things. But for instance, the group, Meals on Wheels, it's an important service. They clearly state here in their comments they're a nonprofit, and they do use lots of plastic and styrofoam, but offering solutions to that, when people hear about compostable packaging, right away the expense comes to mind, because it is expensive. But what are some, alternatives if we're not going to have entirely compostable packaging, for instance, because we're not going to have composting bins readily available and the proper recycling bins at these events and stuff. What can we provide for solutions that address these problems in our proposal? And I think that'll be important.
Yeah, with like the Meals on Wheels, we can work with that group and give and work with them towards a timeline where changes can happen. One of the initial things we could do, is make sure that the plastic they're using are the ones that are recyclable, that labeled,
exactly.
Right. And make sure that they do get recycled as opposed to just thrown into blue bags or whatever to be landfilled. but it's trying to reduce, helping them to reduce that and then find alternatives for that. So
Right, yeah, and I think it's coming from the source, like in this case with the Meals on Wheels, they're packaging up the products and bringing them to people's homes. And then once it's at people's homes, it's up to them how they're gonna dispose of it. So they won't necessarily be able to police that, but what they will be able to do is, let's find an alternative for styrofoam.
Yeah,
If it
styrofoam,
doesn't
yeah.
necessarily need to be compostable, for instance, but maybe it's paper, or maybe it's cardboard, or, whatever.
Where does Meals on Wheels create their food?
So I know that it's based out of the senior center on Court Street.
Is that town owned?
Yeah.
So I'm just wondering, are they prepping food there, or are they just passing through? That's the question, I guess, maybe the
It's a
nature of
very
the
good
question.
question, I don't know.
So when we look at this and that great example, right? It pretty quickly it's like, oh my gosh, this is overwhelming. There's so many departments, so many permits, so many things, and so I think it comes back to finding champions. It comes back to, yes, we need to have that conversation with Meals on Wheels, but we can't go through and do all that. We have to find the champion in the organization there that we can partner with, and maybe as a committee we're divvying up, and Adam's going to take Meals on Wheels, and Nina's going to take partner with team, and sort of Parks and Rec, and so and just kind of get into some coaching with this, because it's such an overwhelming thing, but it's kind of ferreting out that champion in the organization that is willing to embrace this, because even though there's that 50% pushback number, somewhere in that organization, for each one of those people, there's somebody who's gonna say, yeah, I think we can do this. So.
Well, just from reading some of this feedback, probably rightfully so, maybe there's some confusion in the language, because I think it needs to be fully clarified that this is not for somebody that brings food on the town property.
Right.
It's only those people that are vending on town property. And certainly we weren't intending to do the, have emergency personnel suffer the consequences of this. That was certainly not, but
Sorry. Water bottle.
also, no, I think that those are all good feedback. I'm also reading some of the feedback about packaging that comes in, and then the vendors sell, right? So if you're at the farmer's market and they've already pre-packaged their meats and stuff, you don't want them opening it up and then, repackaging it. So I think that's gotta be, so it seems to me there's a few exceptions in here that could easily be added in to clarify it and make it easier for people to understand. And if you're talking about a K-cup filter for your coffee, that's not what this was really meant to address. If you're bringing that stuff on bringing it with you, it's only really a vendor type issue.
It's interesting.
But I would say, sorry to jump in, but I would say by including town property, if we're buying in bulk K-cup filters, there are alternatives out there. Even
I was thinking that it was just an individual bring it on property.
Right, it could be. I don't know.
Yeah.
And I think that's I agree completely with everything that you're saying. For me, part of the reward working as a municipal employee is I don't live here. This doesn't become my burden, but by working with volunteers, I need to know that this community is invested. And I do think by voting to create this position, by supporting repeatedly conservation actions in Exeter, the community is going to have the backs of these folks. And so if it's more expensive, an organization like Team brings tremendous value to tremendous events to town. And I think that this community is going to rally. I believe. Don't hold me to it. I financially don't want to be responsible if that's not the case, but I do believe that this community is going to rally around it, and I think that it will be recognized when changes are made. And so, I do agree there are some, in my opinion, pretty simple language changes that we can work on, and I can step through those as well if we want to.
But I think also I understand it about. You say, people bring it in, but then I think as a town, as an organisation that is running the town, for example, the water bubble, or what we call it upstairs in the Novak room, you know, the cups that you have, they're plastic, right? So, you know, you want to set an example,
Yeah, exactly.
right? You want to, you know, you as a town is saying, okay, you know, we want to ban single-use plastics, and then you want to set an example, and then you look at your supply chain and you try and change that and be an example. I mean, we're in 2022 and we have experienced one of the driest summers, right? And unbelievable temperatures, you know. And if we can't action something like this, you know, it's like, well, you know, music is not going to be any good on a dead planet, right? You know, you don't. Why continue to generate and use oil to produce plastic that is here forever?
Yeah.
Doesn't decompose, doesn't get, you know, it's a pollution.
It's interesting when you look at the numbers, when you look at the numbers of permits per entity listed here, the top 6 pull more permits than all the rest of the list, right? The top 5 almost do. So it's like the work to be done is obviously, you know, in the, at least in the single-use plastics permitting element, obviously there's internal constituents, you know, the office buildings and things like that we have to look at. But, you know, this is where you train your fire, right? This is these top 5, top 6, you know, right through Prescott Park Arts Festival.
Yeah, what is Prescott Park Arts Festival? What are they doing
So-
in Exeter?
So I believe that was when Ben Anderson first moved to
was
town
director.
and was holding plays at at town hall.
Oh.
In the winter.
In the winter.
Yeah,
Okay.
when he was over at Prescott.
Yeah.
Right, gotcha.
Okay. So that might not even make the
Yeah,
list,
that
but I
wouldn't
mean,
be on there anymore.
no, but I mean, it's certainly worth, you know, taking a look at and, you know, I mean, maybe we do, you know, think about subcommittee work that has to happen. I mean, certainly our charge has to be addressed, and Adam and I are committed to seeing, to coming back to the group with the set of proposals there. But, you know, maybe, you know, once we work with Kristen on, you know, tidying up a little bit of the language fixes and stuff like that. I mean, I think the value of the survey here is that it really shines a light on, you know, people that need convincing and where to go to work, you know. So
How
maybe
much time do we have to go to work?
So ideally, I mean, not ideally, but what we had talked to Nico, what Chetna and I had talked to Nico about was an early October for the first reading for the select board.
That's
Soon.
Yep.
Yeah, 3 weeks.
So that it doesn't, I think there's a budget committee session, and then, so not to get it lost in all that, to have, I think he suggested 2 in October and 1 in November, so it would be 3 public meetings. And, you know, armored with all our facts and figures and whatever. And obviously it's open, so people will come, people from those organizations who are concerned and so on. So it's, you know, it's a question of also us doing our sort of research and work and saying, okay, you know, looking at supporting the ordinance to say, well, you know, we're asking you not to be selling single-use water bottles at your event. So what are the alternatives? Here, you know, what others have done, or here's what we're looking to do. You know, one of the things that we did consider was to get more information on potential opening of water fountain at Swayze, and one in sort of by the bandstand or whatever. You know, so that there are, you know, ways in which that people feel they don't have to hold on to their plastic water bottles, that they can easily refill them.
yeah, I think so. Yeah, the work is to find the pushback, come up with a slate of alternatives for the popular pushbacks, and be ready for people to ask questions we don't have answers for, but be prepared to say we don't know, but we'll find out. But I think it should be pretty easy to glean, you know, the top 15 things that people say can't happen because of why, and just be ready to come back, you know, to answer that with some suggestions.
When would we make edits to
So
When
I
you started.
I crafted some suggested edits based on the survey results that we can talk about tonight, and some of the justification behind it. And then if you are comfortable with those edits, then I think it's safe to say maybe we can move forward to the select board, at least in our scheduling plan. If it turns out through conversations that you're having with the community, that's not a great timeline, we're not married to that, you know, but the goal is to sort of push this forward. You know, it's winter might be a little bit slower for events, so it might be more time to allow them to kind of gear up and kind of find sources for a lot of these products, or replacement sources for some of these products, and also give us time to do that as well.
Well, if we wanted to push this forward faster, one alternative, which we've already kind of put in the red line here, is, you know, Exeter Parks and Rec shall work with the Sustainability Committee to develop a transition plan. We could also add in team and Meals on Wheels to that. So that, you know, the two primary pushbacks that we're getting, we're exempting out the emergency use from what I can see here. And the two others that have two primary pushbacks, which rightfully so have some, you know, concerns about it, that might allow for some more flexibility.
Yeah, I think one thing we probably have to be clear with, I guess with the transition time as to how, you know.
Right. Suggest that we add some time parameters in there.
Without giving away the store, obviously.
Right.
Yeah, and because I think, you know, there might be also then it'll end up being a pushback from some of the other organisations who've signed up and said, okay, well, you know, we are meeting the permit requirements for not having single-use you know, plastics on at the event on Swayze Park, but then you're giving an exemption for this one organisation because, you know, they hold events X number of times more than I do or than we do. So I think there's definitely a situation where the conversation needs to be had with those organisations for sure as to why they feel that that they can't do without.
Does team take money when they give out water to the musicians?
So I think all of this it's us learning more about these individuals, because I don't know. Like, I have the survey results. I did hear from Scott. His daughter actually put together her own survey before this survey went out, and surveyed. It was at the May 25th, the
17th.
Yeah, May 17th, the festival that was at Swayze Parkway, and surveyed the 5 trucks. But I think it makes perfect sense to work with these organizations to come up with a solution, and it might be that each organization needs their own unique spin. Like Meals on Wheels to me feels very different from Parks and Rec, feels very different from Team. But there could be some collective knowledge gain. One, in understanding their procedures and find out ways that maybe we can move them toward more sustainable products down the road. I don't know. And two, I think that, you know, having a larger group purchasing some sort of sustainable packaging or materials might benefit all of them, you know, if we're able to sort of pool their purchasing together or something. But
and even just, you know, having the resource knowledge to recommend things. Even if we can't do that, if we can, great. And if we can't, just say, well, have you looked at these 3 vendors that offer these items instead of what you're doing? That's why I think, you know, because like Meals on Wheels, like you said, is such a different animal than what Parks and Rec has going on and so on, is, I like that idea of once we get to that next step is, you know, just taking a committee member and making a partnership and, you know, Jackie partners with Meals on Wheels or whatever, and finding out all the, because we're learning all the things, like we don't know in their weeds every day, day in, day out, the troubles that they have, and handing stuff out and taking stuff back and what people want. But if we can kind of, you know, divide and conquer a little bit and come back as a group and say, here's what I learned at Parks and Rec, and how does that line up with Meals on Wheels, and what can we recommend to team instead for their, their musicians for hire and things like that. I think it could help us out.
But it's also the vendors, right? It's also like for like the team festivals and like the Alien Festival that happened, you got the vendors, so I don't know who organised the Alien Festival.
The chamber, I believe.
Okay, so would they have completed a permit for?
I suspect so.
Okay. And then the vendors that sort of were.
So food truck vendors, if they're reserving a parking spot that's on town property, they would get a permit.
Separate from the organizer who's organizing the event.
Yes, we did that at Alewife.
So does that have? So is that the same with team? So Scott organizes the team festival, and then obviously their vendors at the festival.
I believe so, unless he applies for a certain number of parking spots.
I think he does, because I went and did one of Team's things at Swayze, and I only had to fill out paperwork with Team because he was the permittee, and so because he books the whole Parkway Road,
Right.
he then doles out.
So
I didn't have to fill out a separate town of Exeter or anything.
Okay, so. All right. So I'm just trying to think as to when you're signing the permit as an organizer, I am committing, as an organizer, I'm committing to the requirements of, say, no single-use plastics, right? And then if a vendor that is coming to my event.
But that comes back to what we talked about the last time we met, is like what's the enforcement? What are the teeth of the enforcement and the ability to say, hey, here's a written warning. When you brought in 30 vendors, 10 of them didn't comply, but in the end, you're responsible because you brought
the
in,
event
right, exactly,
organizer.
yeah. So here's your written warning, or whatever we agreed to, whatever we were going to put in the language, but something along those lines, and say, look, the next time you pull a permit, we're going to be inspecting a little more closely, and we need you as the organizer. That's got to be in your language.
So in my past life of organizing events. So the way we worked was that you'd sign that permit or whatever, you'd have X number of vendors, but you would then be proactive in making sure that the vendors knew what your requirements were.
Absolutely, because there's fire code, there's all this other stuff you have to be knocking down anyway.
And as a vendor, you had to say what you were selling. That you were aware that it was a plastic-free event, and that you were making sure that you would be having that, and that if you were doing, that items would be recycled, whatever, if you had packaging. So there was a whole list of things that the vendor then signed off. So you had, as an organizer, you had that, agreement with them. And so if the organizer got pulled up for it not being a plastic-free event because you agreed with the town or whatever that it was going to be, then you had some comeback to the vendor.
Yeah, I definitely think there's stages. So should this eventually get adopted, right, by the select board, we would need to work to modify the the permit that's issued, and maybe we could develop some sort of checklist that they then use to protect themselves or whatever. This isn't designed to be a hammer, but to document that they've had that, or help them have that conversation with their vendors. So maybe what we should do next is just go through kind of some of the next steps so that we can get to the language, because I think it sounds like maybe there could be some tweaks. Oh yeah.
Well, I was just gonna, so the reason why I was asking about whether or not Teams provides the water free of charge, and similar to Meals on Wheels, just as another alternative for discussion is, can we define vendor as somebody who sells a piece of plastic to a customer, whereas that would then exempt Meals on Wheels, it would exempt Teams if they were donating the water to their performers, and that opens up a bit of a loophole. But we could say, later on we could have that transition policy, in a few years for any use of water.
I think we could just go with plastic free now.
I think it's always easier to find a way to exempt it after more. I'd rather find like 10 solutions first before we have to, keep that exemption in a vest pocket for as long as absolutely possible. I mean,
But if I don't know, if you're a human being and you are absolutely passionate about music, you love playing live, you like being outdoors, I don't know, there must be an element within you to say,
I'm with you.
oh my God, I don't need a plastic water bottle. I can have a reusable bottle that will keep me hydrated while I perform. It's just
I think intellectually, yes, but I think when, the guy skids in from the airport and he runs to the stage and he's lost everything and it's hot and he's thirsty, all the intellect goes out the window and you're thirsty. And so, I don't know.
But
We don't have Dave Matthews, I know, but I'm just saying.
But the vendor can also provide water in other forms, right?
Exactly, absolutely. Shouldn't there be
Right.
teams reusable bottles to give to your performance? Right, exactly. So that's why I'd like to get to 10 solutions first.
Okay.
And obviously, emergency services, of course, we're going to have to just let that happen until we can come up with a better way, but that's, above our pay grade for sure, so.
what did we do before we didn't have plastic water bottles? How did we all survive?
People died, houses burned down, you name it. It all went sideways.
It's just, it's just like,
So
I think we need to push, right?
I think we need to push, but I also think we have to walk in their shoes a little bit, and that's how we're going to build consensus and try to understand what they're facing, so we can come up with solutions we can all agree on. I think that's the hard challenge, because I think what I said before is I do think that the town approved this committee. They elected all you members. And we made some progress, and now I feel like when I walk down the street, the neighbors are looking at us going, okay, what are you guys going to do this year? What's going to happen? And I think for us to be effective and for us to lead, it's going to be, I don't know that they want, many of us got here from an activism role. And I think the hardest transition from that to this has been, how do we advise to take that passion and channel that into some effective advisory capacity. And I think some of that's going to have to be walking in that 57% shoes a little bit and coming up with a method that helps them see the light and helps them adopt some suggestions.
Right, and how cool would it be if those large permittees suddenly, with your guidance and working together as partnership, become your champions of people who are like,
I'd rather have it become Scott's press release. Exactly, yeah.
We worked together on a timeline that worked for us and worked for them, and wow, we were able to do it. I mean, there's room for so much winning here.
Yeah.
And they really took the time to understand our issues with your suggestion that we each go after.
And to advertise an event to be plastic free, how great would that be?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Right?
And I think
how great would that be?
Yeah, and I think that's how we also get external partners to partner with those people. I mean, especially all the public stuff. Meals on Wheels is going to be hard. Some of these things are going to be hard because they're such critical parts of of society in town, but they're not sexy. They're not glamorous. To find a partner to get Scott to give water bottles to musicians is probably not going to be that difficult, right? But solving Meals on Wheels can be much harder solved, right?
But I think it gives us another angle in terms of like what we were saying, that you work with Meals on Wheels, and then they're obviously delivering to households, and that can be another education piece.
Sure.
To say to the householders, that, oh, okay, so, we are doing this, and these containers are, can go in your recycle bin, and then you're building on that awareness and that education part of it.
Anybody belong to Anna's Coffee Cup Reuse Club?
Yeah.
So, I mean, why isn't Meals on Wheels taking the containers back when they visit again, right? Why are we not washing and reusing and refilling? But again, it comes into getting involved in their thing enough to know, like, are they just passing through food or are they preparing food? And that so you can, I think it's $5. I forget what the heck it is, but you keep bringing back an insulated stainless steel cup, and it's more like it's like the it's like the Uber of cups, right? You just get a new cup every time and bring the one back, they wash it, and it magically appears again.
Yeah, it's really cool. Yeah.
But why couldn't Exeter pioneer that for Meals on Wheels? Why couldn't you have, a project like that we find an external partner for? That's what I'm talking about. I think the time for this as a committee to step up and engage more positively and actively, but in a super positive partnering way. And the Meals on Wheels example is an example, but I think if we can find a couple of those nuggets each time here, I think that's what we got a gun for. So,
Okay.
sorry.
It's totally fine. I think this is a great conversation. So I'll step through what I had come up with for next steps, and it sounds like we can add some more from your perspective. So the first one was a simple one that's just clarifying the title of the policy to address the confusion. It's for plastic product. It's for foods. Hang on, where am I? Plastic bags provided at the point of sale for transporting foods or other goods. That's the plastic bag that we're talking about. And I think with having a conversation with town staff, that will clarify. Create an allowance to address the food safety concerns. To me, that is kind of a no-brainer, and I do like the I think there's some room for progress with the vendor definition. Work with Public Works and Swayze trustees to explore the possibility. Right now there's of adding water near the bandstand. Right now there is a spigot on the Park Street pathway. It's on Water Street, but there could be a possibility to bring that in. I don't know what the condition of that is, but it's certainly something we could look into. And I do believe that we could possibly, there are grant opportunities out there. I think there's ways that we can leverage some funding to make that work. But again, that's a multi-step process. It would require checking with Public Works, working with the trustees, and getting the funding. So Jay Perkins with Public Works they're responsible for the trash cans, and he did say with commitment from the individual, they would be willing to drop off a recycle bin as long as they have designated someone to police it, so that they have some assurance that there's no contaminants getting in there. That's one. And then arrange a subcommittee to meet with James Murray to discuss implementation and oversight. I have an additional recommendation that I thought of after our conversation that I think will alleviate some of James's concerns. And then I suggested some additional recommendations. Consider exemption for emergency services and human service related nonprofit organizations, acknowledging that we could work with Meals on Wheels to help them through, they are reliant on quite a bit of single-use plastics. So how do we help them transition? And then establish a subcommittee to work with Parks and Rec. So your conversation about having people to kind of, that really addresses it. So the changes that I made, I might have another copy. This is printed out. I guess I don't. I'm sorry to not have it, but instead of distribution of single-use plastic on town property, single-use plastic bags, food service products, and polystyrene food containers. So I think changing that title might help, and then also some sort of education as it's being implemented. So the way this policy is written for your benefit is basically there's some definitions, and then it says, no person shall distribute a prohibited single-use disposable item at any town facility, town property, town managed or sponsored event, or activity authorized through special permits issued by the select board. And those prohibited single-use disposables are single-use plastic bags, single-use food service products, and single-use polystyrene containers. So the exemptions that I added, I broke it into two different categories. One was product exceptions. And so the original language was reusable bags and single-use compostable food service products. Those existed. I added packaging materials required for food safety reasons, added at the site of business or processing facility, for example, wrapping around meat, seafood, lettuce mix, or other perishable products. And then I did add products where alternatives to prohibited items don't exist. Like if you, I don't know, can you not get some product? Let's have an exception there just
Sure,
in case.
yeah, because we don't know
what that
everything,
is.
and someone else does, so.
Yeah. And then organizational exceptions. The original one was all town departments and vendors may distribute their remaining inventory for 9 months following policy adoption. And so that allows them to use up their existing stash of products. And the other one that existed was prohibited single-use container brought by staff or customers themselves. So if I'm going to an event and I bring, my own plastic water bottle, that's not your fault. You didn't sell it to me. The two organizational exceptions I added was items used by emergency responders or human service related nonprofit organizations.
When you say that, what does that mean?
So human services is like Meals on Wheels, or if there's like a, what would be another example?
Or any
Food
organization like
pantry
St.
sort of
Vincent de Paul or anything like
yeah.
that? Okay, got
Yep.
it. Okay.
Exactly.
Does teen fall into that already?
Human service?
No, they're an
No.
arts organization.
We could add a definition for human service.
Yeah,
If-
well, I'm just trying to figure out what we want, the real intent
I mean,
of that is.
human services are kind of like, we provide
Pam's
support
list.
through town. We provide support through town, like vouchers for oil,
Yeah.
when, heating oil if you can't afford it, or provide, transportation services and things like that. Those are human service.
I just think we need to, if that's gonna be the exemption, we gotta be pretty clear about that, because human service related nonprofit organizations, that could, depending on how our chairs and vice chairs feel.
You probably need a definition.
Yeah, we just need a bit of a
Yeah,
clarification.
Pam's probably got a definition for that already in her world of work.
Yeah.
I'm sure we could find one.
Yeah.
But you do
Yeah.
call out that related
Mm.
organizations, maybe it's human service nonprofit organizations.
Yeah. Ditch related.
You're gonna,
Well, a cousin of mine, he runs.
And then two additions that aren't on the version that I sent out. One was in talking with Chetna and Nico, it really felt like maybe losing the permit is enough of a
Deterrent.
thank you, enough of a deterrent that we don't need to add the fine on top of it. So I would recommend, should you adopt this, that you also eliminate that third bullet, which is the $300.
But that was the
citation.
third strike, right? That was.
It was.
That was after the
It was.
repeat offender, right?
But if you don't get the permit,
Oh, yeah.
like, are you
I guess
kind of
what's the
losing
point?
more than,
Yeah.
are you losing more than you would if you had
Sure.
to pay a fine? Probably,
Yeah.
I would hope.
Yeah,
I
that's a good
don't
point.
know, but possibly. And then the town department, so if the town department determines a violation of this ordinance has occurred, I mean, we could step that up and just say, if a violation is reported to me, I'm fine taking that burden forward and taking that burden off of James.
Sure.
So we can offer that to him. But I haven't talked to James about that yet, so.
So then it's just a matter of, obviously, James has to get comfortable with that, and who else in the town has to get comfortable with that? Does Russ have to get comfortable with that?
Yeah, I mean, it's a workload, so
Yeah.
Dave would probably need to approve my
Yeah.
time spent on that, and Russ
Yeah.
and James.
And then there would just also have to be sort of a documented public path to make something. So someone down the street says, I saw this violation, who are they gonna know to come see
Right.
you? And okay, yeah, all right.
And maybe it doesn't necessarily have to be prescriptive in the policy, maybe I don't know that someone can.
No, 'cause
find
it'd be
out
internal,
where it is.
yeah,
So
yeah.
it would be on the town website or something
Sure.
like that.
Okay.
Okay, so that's all I have.
Is that all? Wow. Well,
So as Chetna said, because this would become a town ordinance, it takes 3 public readings by the select board. If you're supportive of this language with amendments to add human service definition and eliminate human service related, and delete the third penalty, which is the fine, then as, you know, obviously discuss it, but as a committee, you would need to take that vote again.
Yep. What did you guys hear that you liked or didn't like? How does everybody feel about those changes?
I think they make sense and, yeah.
Can we switch out that third one to like no permits into perpetuity, like ever? They can keep the $300. No, that's okay.
I mean, we can always modify this,
Sure.
like, I guess
I
that's
agree.
where,
Yeah.
where I
Fully
sit
permit's
with
a big
this
deal.
is, let's try.
Yeah.
Right? And if it really is going down for some reason we didn't, in flames, for some reason we don't anticipate, it's,
We have to correct
I put
it.
that burden on this group to, let's fix it, you know?
And then we can change it.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, no, that makes sense.
You know, I
And
think
as we learn more too, I think we probably will have some edits and
Right, so
Yeah.
that, I guess that's sort of the unknown as far as I'm concerned. Like, do you want an opportunity to bring back, we're not married to that timeline, do you want an opportunity to bring this back one more time after meeting with these entities to see if there's some modifications or edits? I will offer that there's 3 readings by the select board, and it doesn't have to be 3 readings once the final language happens. The select board can, during their meetings, make edits. So they're,
so the third
That-
reading could be different from the. I mean,
Yes.
There'd be edits from the
Yes.
first reading.
And
Oh.
do the 3 readings have to be scheduled at the same? So if we have our first reading and also we visit with these entities, we're going to collect a lot of information from both the select board reading the first time, both public comment, their comments, and then also these visits with all these entities and learning what we're going to learn. Can we have that reading, use that time to reconvene, reshape this document as needed, and then get 2 more after that? Or does it have to be 3 after the revised?
after the final. That's a
Yeah.
good question. I think it's 3 after the
It
final.
would make sense, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and there's a time frame involved. It's got to be done within a certain number of days from the first reading to the third reading.
Really does.
So when I go back to your May recommendation, which you executed, which was to get this document in front of town employees so no one, freaked out, and the survey was great. It kind of breaks the ice and all sorts of things. I'm curious what you or anybody knows about, the path of these kind of proposals to go to a select board reading with this level of, it seems like, in our mind, seems like a pretty polished draft. We're going to, certainly there's changes afoot, but what's the, I guess, success rate, or what's the, how often does that move forward successfully without significant changes? I mean, do we typically see, this is a proposal for an ordinance, so it's.
I mean, I would expect some comments from the first one. I would.
Yeah.
And some modifications. Hopefully by the second time we've got it refined.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you guys feel? Do we think we want to, because, I guess the other thing too is I guess that's a great question. So let's say we say as a group, great, we're going to vote this language through. We're ready to go to the first date we're going to recommend to get the first of our 3 readings. Can we pull the fire alarm after the first reading and go, we've got a lot of work to do, and sure, right?
yeah.
Just take it off the table. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, the 2 public hearings have to be 10, but not more than 21 days apart. So for the first 2, and then there's a vote on the third.
Okay. Who'd like to make a motion to accept this language?
I would
And
like
if
to-
you, sorry, but if you do, I would include language that says with the edits that we discussed.
I would like to make a motion to accept the changes with the edits that were presented.
I'll second that. You can bang your iPhone or what?
all right. Can we have a vote round the table? Yes or nay?
Yes.
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 Great.
Yes. Great.
As far as getting in touch with these different groups? Should we identify that now so that we can?
Well, I think at minimum, I think what we should do, just my opinion, I'll let Chetna tell me quiet. I think two things. One is there's the sort of internal constituents, right, that we have, departments, right? And then there's external permit pullers, right? And there's those top 4 or 5 that, but maybe because time is tight, maybe it's our internal constituents that we want to partner with first. I feel we have more weight if the town as an organization is on board and we're making successes there. Then it makes it much easier to go to top permittees that are external and say, the town's moving this direction. We'd like to, you can say it with a little more confidence. But that's my thought. What do you think?
Yeah.
I think we
I
identified the 3, right? Was it 3 team Meals on Wheels? And
Unless you're exempting Meals on Wheels, that could be an after the ordinance, because they're a human service organization.
Yeah, but I don't know.
I think it would be still beneficial for us
Yeah.
to start that conversation and see exactly how
to understand the process.
Yeah, and then we can decide if they're exempted, but it becomes a pilot project versus being, exactly.
and then we can also then
I mean, they could be.
look at a timeline.
Yeah.
To help them through that process.
I just brought that up, meaning like that's not your October 1 deadline.
Right. Gotcha. Right.
Yeah, because
that's part of
that sunset clause obviously doesn't even, until this gets passed by voters or passed by the select board, because this would just be a select board thing, right? Or would it have to get passed by voters, right? So once it passes, and is there a commencement date on that?
So we removed the sunset clause for the Meals on Wheels in this iteration. So it's a 9 months from adoption. People could continue to use their stock.
Okay.
So the main one is Parks and Recs, is the department that would
I can jump in. I can jump
with.
in on that. I can volunteer to engage over there.
So that, because they're the ones who have the most concern.
They're in my budget committee domain also, so.
What other departments?
I would jump on the Meals on Wheels, but I mean, not knowing that we don't have to necessarily do it by October.
I think we still need, I think it would be good to have that conversation to find out what the process is. Because it would definitely help us in when we're presenting to the select board.
Yeah, for sure.
Of that.
Yeah. No, I'd be happy to.
Do you know if we got pushback or comments, negative comments on this from the farmers market?
The farmers market was supportive. The only recommendation from them was the
meat.
The
meat. Okay, all right, that's great.
I mean, they're a great example
Because Portsmouth has it, and
right. Okay.
they do this Portsmouth farmers market.
Right.
So they
Good point.
They use it.
Do you think it's worth talking to them? Like, how do they do it in Portsmouth? Could we share how they do it with team?
Yeah,
Isn't it like
how
a
do they get adoption? Yeah.
thing, kind of?
There's got to be, whatever similar type of Portsmouth arts organization that's, I don't know, or at least, you must know your counterpart over there in Portsmouth?
I do. I don't know that they're involved with the farmers market, but yeah.
Okay. Or
But I do have a point of contact for the farmers market.
But I was thinking maybe just the broader question of, any suggestions on gaining traction internally as they, what was their process like to go from this stage through select board?
So yeah, theirs was a little bumpy because COVID happened.
Yeah.
So it's sort of been.
Or top 3 tips they could offer.
Yeah.
But also the Portsmouth department, the Portsmouth Council, on how it's affected their departments. How what is it that they're looking for?
Yeah.
Because so reading through the departmental sort of questions and clarifications, I think you're not going to be selling from the department. If you're purchasing things which are plastic and whatever.
That's one of the internal consumption.
Yeah. So, looking at the supply chain and looking at what it is that we are purchasing, plastic, and how there's alternatives.
So I did send this packet that you received to all of the permittees as well as staff, so they have that. In my mind, it makes sense for me to follow up and just say, hey, this is what we're preparing to present. For staff, if they have questions, I'm happy to meet with them, and if someone wants to join me, totally fine. And I'm also willing to be there when you speak to the other groups that you want to. But I think, that really boils down to team, because they involve several other vendors. So I think by talking to team, we'll be able to understand the issues beyond them. And then I think that a lot of the others, and I can try to tease apart who specifically. I didn't look at who said exactly what. There were just a few comments that I was like, who said that,
But for example, if I reach out to Greg, it's not going to be a surprise to him. You've already had these conversations.
Absolutely.
And, okay, great.
Absolutely.
Great. Okay.
Who gets a soda in styrofoam? That's all I know.
What is this, 1962?
What does it say?
Who gets soda in
Soda in
styrofoam?
styrofoam.
So
Come on,
I don't know, I think they still sell them there.
or like coffee cups.
Right.
Is that what,
What is this, an episode of Kojak? Come on.
Yeah.
Styrofoam soda.
Isn't Dunkin' Donuts styrofoam?
No, I think they've almost all switched to paper now.
Have they?
Yeah.
Okay.
They have a double
So-
walled paper.
Shows you how often,
They had the double plastic, I remember in Boston, I mean,
Yeah.
like in the summer.
Oh, yeah.
Because you don't want your hand to get cold.
No,
They
exactly,
made the double
yeah.
plastic tractor.
Or plastic in the styrofoam for this.
Right, yeah. Yeah, that was
What's a single-use
brilliant.
Easter eggs?
So Parks and Rec has
Easter egg.
the Easter egg hunt on Swayze, and so they put
Use the plastic.
prizes I'm not attended, but put the prizes or food or
Yeah.
something inside the eggs.
Exactly.
I was also just worried
Paper,
about
Germany
the
makes
Christmas
beautiful
parade.
paper eggs.
When they throw out
The
chocolate
sweets,
candies
yeah.
and stuff like that, that are plastic wraps.
Yeah.
Yeah, those
Is it-
plastic eggs.
Yeah, it's things like this. You just think you're near,
So
you're
much
near
to
a,
waste.
yeah. It's not necessary.
Like,
Yeah.
You're near water.
what about the rest of the world? Are they, Americans are just as the most wasteful from what I
But
understand.
I come back to if we're some percent successful, there's these top things. We'll get the fire truck guys throwing candy next year, I mean, let's
Right. Let's not bother the Easter Bunny just yet.
You're gonna make all the kids cry because they're the Easter Bunny?
Benefits. Like, come on.
Wow.
Just get rid of it.
Definition of
I got my dentist to
really
switch to,
useful.
when they send you home with the goodie bag at the end, I got my dentist
Things
to
like
switch
that.
to paper.
Paper, yeah. No,
Yeah.
Oh, good.
Took 3 years of complaining.
Wow, that's amazing. But the
You don't
thing
think
is,
it's
I mean,
do you?
Yeah.
Oh, nice, I noticed that. I totally noticed
no,
that.
but looking at the dentist,
Thank you.
the association, I know this because I sort of had a go at some of my dentists, some of the dentists I go, God, the point here is coming through the door.
Oh, I have it in the super.
They can sort of be part of a certification of a eco dental thing, and be plastic free and be
didn't know that.
so there there are sort of
It's out
ways
there.
in which you can sort of tell them we don't need.
But when we get these big entities in town, then it makes the next year that much easier. We have weight. We have, if we're successful in the ones we've targeted tonight,
Halloween parade.
then we'll get those Halloween. All right, Chenna's in charge of the parades. All holidays and parades, Chenna's gonna take on the children. All the kids are gonna cry, and the parents will be upset with us. Bad strategy.
My kids will be upset with me. What'd you do, Dad?
Come in.
I am so sorry to interrupt. Kristen, our meeting is done. Would you mind locking up? Do you
Oh,
feel comfortable?
no problem. Yeah.
All right, enjoy your meeting.
Thanks.
Thank you.
All right, so we are adopting and with the edits.
Yep, and just who to work with who. Like, I guess, do you want to just coordinate with me and we'll figure that out
Yeah.
after the meeting?
As long as we just don't do it as a group, just don't copy all, we can
Yeah.
coordinate with just you two.
So you're going to do Parks and Recs.
I'll volunteer for Parks and Rec.
You're going to do
Meals
Meals
and
and Wheels. And who else was there?
Farmers market?
Yeah, so
Possibly.
just for suggestions of how they make it work
Yeah.
Yeah.
in Portsmouth.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you have like contact
Seacoast Eat
information?
Local, yep.
And Adam wants to talk to Scott, I can feel it.
Sure.
Team.
I need some contact information,
Yep,
No
please.
sure.
Okay.
Problem. Awesome.
Fantastic.
Get all these names.
I did.
I didn't write it down.
Shall we move on?
Wait, Scott is team, right?
Yeah, Scott Ruffner. Any feedback from the subcommittees that were assigned over the summer break? Nina and Jackie?
Yes, we worked on the charge.
Yeah, we did.
Yes. And Jackie has our edits, right, combined.
So can I just fill you both in? So the committee has a charge which is signed off by the select board and as to what this committee should be doing or is doing or why it was formed and all that kind of stuff. And we felt that the committee's been in place now 2 years?
2 years is be our third, yeah.
That it does need a revisit. The charge is on the website if you wanted to read it, it's there. And so Nina and Jackie volunteered to just go through our charge that's there and make any changes or edits. Just so that we had it. Okay.
Charge just gives sort of an idea of
Mission or purpose,
direction,
essentially.
mission, mission statement of the committee, so that we have something to.
And when it was written, as the committee was being formed before the town voted in to have this committee, we sort of, a lot of that charge was to get the role that Kristen has kind of in place, right? So we get to check that box, but then I think it's sort of incumbent upon us to say, okay, well, we need to take that off our charge at this point because, that part is done. Now, how do we refocus, what do we do now that that's in place? So.
Okay, thank you. Jackie?
So, I don't know the best way to do this, but the first one is advise and assist.
I was just, sorry, should we, rather than, because if we sit here and go through each one and then make
give us the
decisions
edit.
like
Yeah,
over
can we
here
just
till
email
10
it to you?
o'clock. Yeah, so
I have
then if we
it.
could maybe, do it that way, can we email it to everyone and then comment on it, next meeting or?
Sure.
We didn't have too many edits, but there was definitely like 2 or 3 that we got rid of number 1, which was advise and assist the select board on the establishment of a formal sustainability officer. That was obvious.
Yeah.
What we just mentioned.
Mostly just like changing some language. There were a couple small edits or things to add, but I can attach it to the minutes
Yeah.
if that's.
Can you do that?
Can we do that from a subcommittee?
Attach, or,
Or does it have to go through Chetna directly? without-
can send it to Jenna. I don't know.
It's
the-
okay
No, you can
to
add it.
email something to the group, right?
Yeah.
Just don't.
What you
reply to
can't
me.
do is
Reply
reply
to the group, okay.
to the
but I mean, like, if she were to attach it, she wouldn't attach it to the minutes.
It wouldn't be
'cause the
published
minutes-
as part of the
right, 'cause
minutes,
minutes
but
would
when
be
she
published.
sends the minutes for publishing, if you include that, we can get it to everyone.
Okay, I'll do that.
It's kind of like kindergarten for you with us, isn't it, right? Helping us walk through basic parental functions, thank you. Thank you.
No, it's confusing. It's confusing.
We're so glad you're here.
Yes, thank you.
Procedures.
All right, so so email them to us and then we can have a look at what the additions and edits you've made and then we can
Yeah,
approve them.
the biggest one, just to,
Yeah.
was to define what does sustainability mean within the context of current town operations. So I think that's gonna be something that we could really hone in on and that sort of being our main mission statement, if you will, like what does sustainability mean to the town of Exeter? I think that's important. And then also important in the language when we present to other groups and stuff, for instance, like this, the plastic ordinance, well, what does it really mean? What are you trying to do?
Yep.
Okay. Chris and Adam were the other two subcommittee people assigned to come up with like top three
projects,
action items for the year.
And we promise to be
More
ready to
responsive.
present at the next meeting. And in fact, we may even email you in advance of that
Okay.
to review those 3 action items
Okay.
before we meet.
That'd be great. All right. Any other business?
That's part of our charge too. Sorry.
Stay on track?
No, the action items.
Tell Chris and Adam to get their act together?
Left out names, no. That's line 7.
Okay. Any other business? No. I just want to add that over the summer we had Bev who stood down, and Kristen was looking to stand down, but she's sort of staying on the edges. On the edges. So on our socials we have a Facebook page. You're welcome to join it. And there's also a Seacoast Goes Green group, which isn't run by us. So all on the socials that I did post out that we were looking for new members, and 2 people approached me and they just needed some time. They were doing something else over the summer, so there's potentially a connection there of people that they may want to join as well.
Great.
So just putting out there, and also I did a TV thing with Bob, again doing a public PSA.
Is it out there yet?
I don't know. I don't look at those things. I don't look at myself. So I did that last week. Again, trying to gather some people to get involved with, even if it's volunteer or just being part of the committee. So that's sort of hopefully, again, if you're out there talking to people, someone seems interested, bend their arm.
Just hook them by the shoulder and drag them up.
Is there a maximum number, or is it kind of like an open
We can have, is it 7? Is 7?
it's 7.
7 on as members, but we can always have alternates, or we can also have additions who can help us at events and things. Because one of our charges is for outreach to spread awareness. So
There are many lonely nights up in the Novak room where we're the only people in there, and I'd love to have other concerned people to come in.
Okay. So yeah, it'd be great. Yeah, right.
I had a couple of things to mention, just, and I think I'm going to start doing this for energy, CONCOM, and sustainability, just so you all know kind of what all the different committees are working on. Later this month, if you haven't seen it yet, the Energy Committee is hosting their electric vehicle. It's, I think, their 4th or 5th annual electric vehicle display at Town Hall. And if you want additional information on any of these, I can get them to you. I didn't think to take notes beforehand of what the dates are. I think it's September 24th, thereabouts. Dave just got a $45,000 grant with Invest New Hampshire to revise our zoning regulations, and basically the impetus of this is to concentrate development adjacent to utilities. So where our water is, where our sewer is, and maybe ease up development in areas where we have natural resources. And I think there's a huge, that's a game changer really as far as the Seacoast region goes and beyond. So I think there's opportunities for SAC members to be involved with that. He's also working on the bike pedestrian master plan that's in draft form.
Yes.
I think that'll be a great engagement tool for you all. The hydro net metering program. So This is basically saying that the town of Exeter uses so much in fossil fuel through Unitil, so many kilowatt hours. We partnered with a hydroelectric plant who basically offers us credits, financial credits for those. It's not a carbon offset, it's not envisioned like that at all, but we do get funds that are being generated through that, and it's my goal to work with Russ to ensure that those are used for sustainability. And so that we have some way at least to grow the budget. When we do eventually get the solar array on board, that will go away, that you can't have both. But anyway, so there's some really exciting things that are coming forward, and I think next time maybe I'll ask that there'll be a placeholder on the agenda for kind of these updates to try to keep the committees involved, more formal than that. There's a bunch more going on, but I can't.
There's a hazardous waste day as well happening at DPW. I think that's in October.
Concom has several outreach events coming up. October 1st is a forest bathing event. I don't know if that's of interest to you folks, but basically going into the forest as sort of a meditative walk. There's a Skywatch program at Rains Barn, which is stargazing and understanding the night sky. And we're working to partner with Parks and Rec on a variety, like kayaking tour and things like that. And those are really great opportunities to engage with members of the public on any topic, because you have residents around and happy and they're excited to, celebrate. So those are great opportunities to engage with folks.
Absolutely.
In a casual way.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyone else? No? You're good? Okay. Motion to adjourn.
I second.
Okay, it is
8:41. Right?
2041.
Well done, well played.
Thank you, everyone. Really appreciate your time. Stacey, do you want to give Jackie your email so that
Thank you for tuning in to Exeter TV. Exeter TV is the town's public and government access channels, available on Comcast channels 98 and 22. Channel 98 is your channel. If you have an idea for a program, want to host your own talk show, or submit a film, we're here to get your content on television. On Channel 22, we bring you live and replay coverage of government meetings and other town updates. A third channel, Blue Hawk Media, is operated by SAU 16 and can be found on Channel 13, with all your school sports, events, and meetings. You can watch Exeter TV online at exeternh.tv, Apple TV, and on Roku. Find us on social media for extra content. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the bell to get notified about live streams and new content. Tune in to our platforms every other Friday to watch the Exeter Bi-Weekly Report, with recaps of recent events, updates from town departments, and messages from nonprofits in your area. If you head to our website, exeternh.tv, we invite you to sign up to our newsletter to receive monthly updates about new content, upcoming meetings, and more. We'd like to thank you for taking the time to watch Exeter TV and hope that you tune in to our other content as well.